Not quite a stranger, but my husband and I had had a brief, odd encounter with a maintenance man at our apartment complex. He'd answered an ad we'd put up looking for new players in our D&D group, but had said very bizarre things, so he said we didn't think it would work out. He seemed surprised, but not upset. A few days later, there was a knock at the door. My husband was napping, so I answered, and it's the same maintenance guy. He started rambling about how he just got off work, his ride had flaked, he didn't want to walk home in the July heat, and asked for a ride home. I felt uneasy. I didn't know the guy, he'd acted a little bizarre when we'd first met, but didn't want to seem like a jerk, so I said I'd wake my husband up, since he knew the roads better than me, and he'd drive him home. The guy became strangely insistent and a little aggressive, telling me, "No. It has to be you. I live at cross streets, it's not that far. You can drive me home and be back before he wakes up," and kept going on like that, starting to sound belligerent, like I was being completely unreasonable. An alarm went off in my head. I said, "No, I'm not comfortable with that, sorry," shut the door and locked it, then woke up my husband. I'd been afraid I'd overreacted, but my husband made it clear, no, that had been fishy. He decided to step out and see if he could talk to the guy, telling me to lock the door behind him. He came back a few minutes later. The guy hadn't been outside, so he'd gone to the front office to talk with the manager. What the manager said disturbed him even more. The guy had just been picked up by his mom, whom he lived with. He lived in the opposite direction of the address he'd wanted me to take him to. The manager let us know the guy was a contractor, that had been his last day, but that she was concerned enough that she'd tell the owners to not hire him again. So, we moved out a year or so later. I kind of shoved the encounter in the back of my mind, trying to convince myself that he'd just been a little socially weird, and ignored the more scary parts. A couple years later, my husband called me over to read an article on a local news site. A maintenance man at our old apartment complex had been arrested for using his master keys to break into apartments and sexually assault women and girls who were alone. They had a picture. It was the same guy. That scared the shit out of me. It was obvious he'd targeted me. My husband worked at home, so the maintenance guy never quite knew when he was there, so he couldn't use the master key to break in. He figured a sob story would lure me out to someplace alone. So I used to have two jobs, stripper and food service. At my food service job we had this dude that was completely covered in horrible face tats and acting totally erratic, standing on the corner of the block, rapping and pretending to talk on the phone. He always did this. He would talk in a weird Californian accent, think the Californian skit on SNL, he was visibly high always, his eyes were basically black from his pupils being so dilated all the time. He would come in once in a while and bother us all and leave. He made little sense. He often would try to talk to me in particular, but I just ignored him since I worked in the back. I worked in the kind of restaurants where you can see the entire back kitchen and talk to them if you wanted. There were also a couple times where I'd bump into him in public and he would try to talk to me and I'd be really uncomfortable and make an excuse as to why I need to leave. Then he would actually follow me for a bit, then eventually stop out of nowhere. Well, one night, I'm stripping, I'm making fat stacks, I gather all my money and get off stage, and then I see him. Mind you, I'm naked. Completely naked. And he was like, "OMG, it's you." I'm like, "Yep," and try to walk past him. I'm like terrified. He's like, "Can I get a dance?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "Why?" I'm like, "I'm tired." He sticks around in the club after that, but does leave me alone thankfully. The next food service shift I have, he shows up. He's talking to my coworkers about how he went to the strip club and saw naked people, and as he says this he's just looking at me the entire time. Most of my coworkers at this point don't know about my second job. But yeah, this all creeped me out. I was worried that maybe he was following me around. Fortunately I didn't have a lot of issues with him after that. I think the guy was just out and about in the same area all the time and happened to bump into me a lot. He seemed too erratic to be calculated about where I was. Maybe I'm just naive, but I feel like if he was trying to stalk me it would have escalated, but it didn't, and I haven't seen him since. I've had more scary and fucked up situations with men, but I feel like this thread is more so for just creepy situations and less about saw and physical abuse. If it isn't obvious, I'm extremely traumatized.